Today we're going to be talking about one of my absolute favorite things, and that is how to paint strong and believable and powerful light within your watercolor paintings. And I'm going to show you step by step how I paint the scene, and I'm going to give you my 3 keys to painting strong light in watercolor. And you'll never guess what my first step is. No, I'm just kidding. You hear this every single time. I lay out my drawing first, and then I wet down the back of my paper and the front of my paper. That leads me to key number 1. Plan the light in your painting from the very start of your process. This might sound so simple, but you want to determine where the light source is coming from in your painting. That's going to set up all the decisions we make throughout the rest of the process. In this reference photo, you know where the light source is. It's the gorgeous sunset casting these warm rays of light all across the scene. We want to paint darker everywhere else in the scene than where that light source is. And I know that just, like, it sounds so obvious when I say that, but that is a big key. Establish where your light's coming from, work your way from that light source, and ensure that everything else that you paint is going to be a lot darker than that light source. So in watercolor, that can be tricky because if we just work from one puddle, we're running out of paint and it's getting watered down. So be sure and paint very strong even in the first wash of your scene. So as I move away from this big glowing orb of light of a sunset, I need to ensure that my values continue to get stronger and stronger as I move away from this area. So let me talk about colors real quick for this sunset. I'm laying in the most vibrant part of the scene, and I'm using some Quinacridone Gold, a very vibrant, glowing color with some raw sienna, some cadmium, medium hue, and as I move away from that, I'm introducing some rose madder permanent, and I'm kind of doling things down as I get away from this main light source. And you'll see I'm introducing some lavender with some rose madder permanent as I move away from this light source. One thing I liked about this sunset was there were some really vibrant warm colors and there's some cool colors. So I've laid in some of this here. Now I'm going up here with some Cerulean Blue and some Cobalt Blue, and I'm laying in those cooler areas of the sky. And you'll notice down here, you can see the little outline of the fence. I'm already thinking about that fence. It's tempting when you see that fence in the reference photo to think it's white. It is white, but it's white in shadow. And we know that we don't want it to be brighter than the sunset, so I'm pushing that value down here right away. Even though I know I'll be going over a lot of this again, still use a lot of paint and really push those values, especially in this first wash. I'm going to need more contrast in that sky and some clouds to really make it get to where I want it to be. So around the light source, I'm using some more raw sienna and a little bit of cadmium orange. And then as I move away from that warm area, this is more lavender, Cobalt Blue, Cerulean with some rose madder permanent. When you lay in your first wash of the sunset, you want to be able to go back over and work into this while it's still damp. If you come in with a fully loaded brush and a lot of water, it's going to bloom and it's going to wash away what you've already been working on. So by using a brush that holds a good amount of pigment and a little bit of water, but it's not as absorbent as a natural hair brush, there's less of a chance of me really messing up what I'm working on here. So watercolor timing and paint consistency is always something that we think about when painting skies or working back into a wet wash. And I came back in with some Quinacridone Gold, a little bit of raw sienna, and connected some of that to add a little bit more value and really get that glowing feeling in the sky. And that right there is what the first wash looks like. So I've laid in the light value of the sky. I've really tried to push that value elsewhere to let that light feel bright. I've laid in this, which is the fence that's in shadow, and really just built up that strength around my light source. So the first 2 keys, think about your light from the very start of the scene. And the second key is go really strong within this first wash. I have really had to push that value and use a lot of paint to get that little bit of glow there in the scene, but all of that's going to pay off as we get further down the road and add more value on top of this. Here is what the painting looks like once things have dried. I'm starting with the tree line, and then we're going to be painting over the ground again to really get that difference in value. So I'm starting over on the left. I'm using a mixture of cadmium yellow, Cobalt Turquoise, and Raw Sienna for this nice, warm, vibrant green. Now I knew that I needed to go over the entire ground again because I was not able to get to the correct value within my first wash, but that's okay. So I'm going over the ground, laying in the trees in the distance. Now this leads me to my third key, and I'm going to be touching on this throughout the remainder of the painting. Your environment that you create in the painting needs to respond to your light source. And here's what that's looking like for me. There's some light shining through the tops of these trees, right? So I don't want that same green all over the place. Right where that light source is hitting, I wanted to drop in some really warm color to show that the light is shining right through the trees there. And you'll notice my edge is a little different. I wanted more of a broken edge. It's less defined than this edge, and that again helps to increase that feeling of light shining through the trees. And I'm negatively painting around the fence that I dropped in earlier. Another way that the environment is responding to the light is I'm using a lot of warmth in this green wash. So some cadmium yellow and some quinacridone gold in the green where the light is really hitting the ground the most. And that was a quick middle value wash here. Now that I've laid the ground in, I'm gonna let this dry. I'm gonna come back in and paint my darks. So I let this dry, and now I wanna paint the big tree here. For that, I'm using Cobalt Turquoise, some raw Umber, and some raw Sienna. And now I'm using a good thick mixture of paint. We want good contrast between the light and this value. Also, a great thing about this tree is there's a lot of like texture in it and a lot of broken edges, and that is really nice to put up over the top of a soft sky. That's when we get a beautiful contrast between edge with hard edges in the tree and really soft edges in the sky. You'll notice that while I'm laying this in, I'm also going back and adding some darks into the shape of this as well. I want the darks of the tree to just melt in to the rest of it. And I'm using my finger to scratch in a few little highlights there. And now I needed to go back and establish the bottom of the trees in the distance. So connecting the dark of that into the dark that's in this main tree. And I'm adding a little bit more dark and texture here in the foreground, bring that area forward. Using my fingernail to scratch in some detail, we know that texture brings an area forward, so adding a little bit of detail and texture here helps bring that closer to us. Key number 3, environment needs to respond to the light source. I'm getting a little bit of gouache on my brush. This vibrant light was just catching the fence just a little bit. By using some gouache and coming in and adding a little bit of highlight on some of the fence. So a little bit of light on the fence also helps to bring that area forward, bring some separation between the foreground and the middle ground, and also makes the light feel more believable. There is a look at the final painting. Let's go over those keys one more time. Number 1, plan the light of your scene from the very start. Know where your strongest light source is and plan accordingly. Number 2, go strong enough, especially in your first wash. We cannot have light in our scenes if we don't have contrast. It's so important to make sure that you're painting strong enough to really let that light glow. And then the third key is make sure that the environment you create in your painting is responding to the light source. So where the light is hitting, use a warmer color. Is there some light effects that you need to get with some gouache or something like that? And I hope that these 3 keys are helpful for you the next time you take on a scene in watercolor that really needs some vibrant light. Have you ever been really excited about a painting and you get all set up, you find that right reference that you're excited about, and then it's time to go and you feel lost? I have a free resource that I want to give to you today that can help with these problems. My 5 steps to plan a successful watercolor painting. I walk you through the crucial planning phase of your painting that will help you understand what you're going to paint first, second, and third. The planning is really so important, especially in watercolor. This medium is harder to correct. It's so immediate. So having that plan is very important. I send you a PDF that you can download. And the great thing about this is you can have it on your phone, you could print it out, and you can take a look at these crucial planning steps before you start each painting. All you have to do is follow this link here and download my 5-step guide to planning a successful watercolor painting.